initial reaction to the budget?
Shock, disappointment, sadness, anger. Saskatchewan students are losing out with this budget. I know we heard that there's an increase of 2.5% to the K-12 funding in schools, but ultimately because of inflation, because of enrollment growth that they talked about, we're seeing a cut of about 2.5%. We said that we needed to see a 5% increase to our K-12 budget, and it was only 2.5. We only got half of that. So in the end, students are going to have less supports next year. School divisions are going to be tasked with difficult decisions once again to decide what programs or what supports are going to ultimately be cut.
And you're factoring in the fact that like preschool and the other areas were kind of lumped in with K-12 under that budget?
Yeah, so everything all together saw a 6.7% increase. That was the total $3 billion. The school division funding was only $2 billion of that, and only saw a $49.4 million increase, which really isn't enough. We already know that we are so far behind in the supports that we had been providing, and they've just been cut and dwindled away over the last decade. I hear from teachers regularly who are feeling burnout because everything just falls on their plate, and they want what's best for kids, they want to work with families, but there just isn't the time and the resources and the professional supports available to meet the needs of all of our students.
This morning, Donna Harpower told us that maybe they would consider, if enrollment goes up, maybe upping that budget. Have you heard that, and if so, does that seem like a good plan to kind of just go with the flow, or what's your response to that?
I haven't heard that specifically, that if enrollment increases that they're going to provide additional funds. That's what we saw last year, so we would expect to see it again, and that's the typical trend based on September 30th numbers. But that's reactionary. We need to have a well-funded system so that school divisions can make great plans to begin with to ensure student success. We don't want students to make it through. We don't want them to do okay. We want them to thrive in our system so that we can have a strong Saskatchewan for years to come. They talked about creating a budget that's growth, that works for everyone. But it's not working for our students. We need a strong Saskatchewan, not just this year, but in 10 years to come when these grade 2s are going out into the workforce after they graduate.
Also this morning, Donna mentioned that there's been like a couple hundred thousand new people coming into the province. So like obviously with people you have children, and so enrollment is expected to go further up, right? Like, are you expecting a higher enrollment than like many of the years past? Like, is this like more than you've seen? Like, what's it looking like right now?
I would say conservative budget or conservative estimates would be pretty close to what we saw this year. So we saw a 2% increase. We're expecting another 2% increase in our next school year. And we know those students are coming in with additional needs. They're new to Canada. They might not know English as a language, and we don't have English as an additional language teachers to support them. We've seen a steady decrease in those numbers. From 2012 to 2019, the English as an additional language teachers dropped by 15%, and yet we saw a 50% growth in those English as additional language learners. That was up until 2019, and so as you said, we have more people coming to this province, and yet the supports aren't being provided for them, and it's really sad to see that kids just continually be left behind.
Out of my own curiosity, also, if you could comment a little bit on special needs supports and that sort of thing, because we have heard through the NDP and anecdotally that, you know, some people might have to leave because their kids aren't getting, you know, the support they need at schools. You know, my family, we have a young girl in our family who's autistic. They can't find anybody to help her. She's in a class where, you know, she's not at the level they are. She doesn't have the right supports. Can you comment on that at all?
Well, classes look different than they had even a decade ago, but from when I was in school or members of the legislature were in school, we have an inclusive environment in our classrooms, and that is great. But those inclusive environments need to be supported so that every student has the professional resources that they need. And so if students have intensive needs and the supports aren't there, that work falls on teachers, and teachers are doing their best to meet the needs of every one of their students. but it's just unmanageable, it's unsustainable, and teachers are burning out. They're taking that emotional stress home with them at the end of the day. I talked to a teacher who said they're not able to sleep because of the stress that they're taking home, thinking that they're not doing the best for their students because the resources just aren't there, and it's so sad to see. As a parent myself, I want what's best for my kids, and I know all the parents in Saskatchewan want what's best for their kids, but the actions of our government in this budget doesn't show that we're preparing for what's best for our kids.
I am so sorry that you didn't have a great day, and do you have anything else you want to add that I haven't asked?
I would just say education is important to everyone. Whether you have kids, whether you are a kid, whether you're a business owner, education is so important to the future of this province. And we're hosting a rally for public education, again, to continue this discussion, talking about why education is important and how it's important to all of us. So I would encourage everyone to come out on April 29th, right here at the legislature, from 12 to 1, and join us in calling on the government to increase their investment, actually make an investment into education so that our kids can thrive.